Good morning, welcome back to my office. Making videos at work. Well, getting paid a little bit of money to do it. Why not? It's kind of like picking up money, right, from the floor. Even if I pick up $1 from the floor, it's like, woohoo! I got $1 for free. It's awesome. Anyway, we're going to talk about how to save your first $1 million. $1 million. It's not what it used to be, right? It's never what it used to be. Inflation, right? But it's still a relatively large number. But more importantly, it's a relatively achievable number for the average middle-class American. Okay? And you can actually, I would say, even, lower end of that, you could more than likely save $1 million too. Depends on how much bitterness you can eat. What we Chinese call 吃苦, literally to eat bitter. Depends on how much bitterness you can eat. And you're talking to an immigrant, so we've done a lot of things to save money. Okay, that's another video. But how to save your first $1 million. So let's talk about some of the biggest expenses that most people have, right? That everybody has. Housing, right? Whether you're renting or buying, you're spending a lot of money on it. Cars, again, leasing or buying, you're spending a lot of money on it. And food and entertainment. 3 biggest expenses. If you can trim a certain amount off of those 3, you can fairly easily make your way to your first $1 million. Let's go to number 1. Housing. At today's rate, every $100,000 borrowed is $700, right? At 7% interest rate. So wherever you are, if you can afford a $500,000 house, well, try to buy a $400,000 house. New York City, if you can afford $1 million house or a little 1-bedroom apartment somewhere in Manhattan, buy a $800,000, $900,000 house instead, or apartment instead. All right? If you can save $700 a month for 30 years and invest it at 10%, you're going to get to well over $1 million. Number 2, cars. The average car, new car right now being purchased is close to $50,000, which is just as ridiculous. And equally ridiculous is the fact that a lot of people are taking out 90-month loans. 90 months, right? Used to be 36 months, 3 years. So people are taking out like mini mortgages to afford a car, right? As Susie Orman says, right? Famous financial advisor. Read her books. If you can't afford it in 36 months, you can't afford it. You bought too much car. Okay? So what if instead of buying a $50,000 car, you wait 3 to 5 years, buy a half price? Right? The car I'm sitting in today is a 2014 Lexus LX 570. I've always wanted a Land Cruiser, but the Land Cruiser compared to the LX 570, even though when brand new was a little bit cheaper, used, because there's a huge cult following of people wanting to take these things off-road, fit them with huge tires, etc. Used, it's more expensive. So I bought the next best thing, right? Which is, these two are virtually the same vehicles, right? This one is slightly less off-road capable, but I'm not taking it off-road. I just love it. I just enjoy it. So I bought this thing instead, 8 years old, at a fraction of the price, and cheaper than the Land Cruiser as a used car. So there's no shame in it. You drive what you want, as long as you can afford it. So if you can save $25,000 off of a $50,000 car, you're going to save a ton of money at the end, 30 years. Whether it's a lease, or if you're going to be paying installments on it, right? $50,000 borrowed is, over 90 months, is $600-700, $800. If you can save half that, well, that's $400 saved per month. And don't forget that a more expensive and a newer car is more expensive to insure. Insurance nowadays is not cheap, right? So if you have half the car, it's going to save you another couple of $100 probably per month on insurance. So between insurance and the car itself, you're saving $600 a month. Okay. Food and entertainment. My wife and I took our lunches to work every single day. My wife did it for 19 years. I did it for 22 years. Lieutenant, 22-year lieutenant, sitting in his office eating a homemade lunch while most of my cops went out and bought breakfast, $10. Latte, $5, I don't know, I don't buy those things. $5, $7, $8, I don't know. Mocha Chocachino, whatever it is, $10. And the lunch, bare minimum, $10. Add all that up, right? It's $20 to $30 a day times 20 shifts per month. That's $400 to $600 per month. $400 to $600 per month, right? How do you get to $1 million? You put into a calculator $500 over 30 years. $500 a month over 30 years at 10% gets you to $1.1 million. So you pick any of those three I just mentioned: housing, cars, food, entertainment. Cut all three, or cut one at a time. Cut a little bit off of each. To equate to $500, you've got yourself $1 million in 30 years. Right? Food and entertainment. When my kids were little, and their classmates were all having these $1,000, $2,000, multi-$1,000 birthdays for like 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. Why? Why? I mean, you do it once, they're going to expect the same thing or better every other year. And then they get to 13, bar mitzvah, sweet 16, quinceañera, 15, and they're literally throwing weddings for these kids. Right? Talking about weddings. Typical wedding right now is about $30,000, $40,000. If you put $30,000, $40,000 away from day one, right? Go get married in City Hall, right? My wife and I often said that our wedding was, really for our parents. Okay, fine, whatever. But let's say you could save that money somehow and get married in City Hall. You put $30,000, $40,000 away from day one. 30 years later, at 10%, you will have almost $750,000 just from that one-day event. One day, 30 years later, you could have had $750,000 and save a couple of, your kids' birthdays. Add it in there. You've got your $1 million after 30 years. I don't know. My wife and I made sure that our kids never had that, We, instead of throwing it at Chuck E. Cheese and inviting 30 of the closest friends, we said, you have 5 names. Give me the 5 names of your closest friends in your class. We're going to invite them over. We're going to make lunch for them. 5 kids, 6 kids, $100. I saved $900. I saved $2,000. I don't know. Anyway, there are a few of those ways to save your first $1 million. This hair, I've been doing my own hair since I was 18. So, is that 31? I don't even know how old I am anymore. 31 years. $10 saved every single week. I've calculated. If I save $10 every single week and I put it into an S&P, it's literally tens of thousands of dollars. Everything adds up. That meme on Facebook about, millennials and their, avocado toast, $10 avocado on a piece of toast that you can make for $1. I mean, laugh all you want, but you literally can save your way by doing these little things to a lot of money, okay, over the long run. Depends on how much bitterness you can eat, what you want. If what you really want is to retire early, then you know what? You eat bitterness. All right, there's your $1 million, or several if you do all those things. Oh, important question. I know somebody's going to be saying, why don't you have several $1 million? You're talking, all this about $1 million being so easy. Why don't you have several million now that you saved on all those things? Well, remember, I didn't work 30 years, right? I didn't work 30 years. I saved for 22 years, right? I didn't give it that amount of time. But the trajectory is there. You can look in a calculator and see exactly where it goes. And also, second reason, right, why I don't have several $1 million from haircuts is because, right, by the time you bought a house, you're pretty much close to 30 years old, right? So from 30 years old, when I started saving on a smaller house, there was only really 10 years to go before I quit work. So I haven't been saving 30 years on a house yet. And after we stopped working, there was no more extra money to put in there. But the trajectory is there had I continued doing that. And if you continue doing that, if you keep doing that, if you're going to be working for the next 30 years, you will be able to save up millions. Take it easy.